Years ago when I was in yeshiva, one of the bachrim who was a little older than I, one of the young men who was older than I was at the time, came over to me and said, "Hey Friedman, you think you're a Baal Gaiva, don't you? You think you're haughty." And I said, I was 19, I said, "Yeah, actually I do." He said, "You're a pathetic Baal Gaiva." He says, "You're a pathetic haughty person." He goes, "I'm a real Baal Gaiva. The difference between me and you is simple. You think you know more than everybody, and therefore you don't have to listen to anybody. I will be better than everybody, and that's why I need to listen to what everybody has to say." To be wise, you can't casually pursue wisdom. You have to actively pursue wisdom. So in that note, I'd like to offer this Torah up, Le'ilu Nishmas, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, Zechat Tzadik Kodesh Livracha, the Rosh Hashiva of Esha Torah, who promulgated the 48 ways of wisdom throughout the world through his tapes, through his classes, through his shiurim, and much of what I'm going to share with you comes from his Torah. I've been to baseball games with people who didn't understand baseball, and they don't enjoy the game. And I've been to baseball games with people who actually played college ball, and I didn't even know a third of what they knew. And I could see how much more they enjoyed it. Obviously, the more wisdom you have of anything, the more you're going to enjoy that thing. The more wisdom you have about life, the more you're going to enjoy life. The more pleasure you're going to get out of life, and the more meaning you're going to have in life. The fact of the matter is that there's wisdom everywhere. There's wisdom just in walking down the street and seeing your surroundings. Ezahu Chacham, the rabbis teach us, who is wise, Halomid Mikol Adam, someone who learns from absolutely everybody and everything. In fact, just this last week, I fell off a motorcycle. That's not for a discussion for this video. However, I came back to law school all perturbed, all excited, all upset, agitated, and my study partner, a very devout Roman Catholic man, turns to me and says in one pithy sentence, "That already happened. Deal with what the present has for you." And that was it. Absolute emes, absolute truth. There's wisdom all around us. It's important to be always learning. But we also have to exercise caution, because there are many ideas out there. There are different ways of looking at things. You have capitalists, you have communists, you have Republicans, you have Democrats, you have Jews, you have Christians, you have Muslims. Everyone believes they're right. Who's right? What's true? How can you judge when a mentor is leading you in the right path or he's leading you down the wrong way? Rabbi Weinberg has a couple of options, a couple of methodologies by which we can perhaps weed out such people. I would just give you a few of his. The first and most obvious was, does this person's message enrich your life, enrich anyone's life for that matter? Secondly, perhaps most importantly, does he live by those ethical standards? We all know the famous story of Dr. Bertrand Russell, the ethicist who taught at City University at the turn of the last century, who was caught in a very compromising position with one of his male students. And when he was asked how it is that an ethicist could act so unethically, he said, "And does a geometry teacher need to be a triangle?" But that's preposterous. A third idea is, does the person who's teaching you wish to hear what you have to say? Open to even hear another side? Or are they so insecure in their knowledge, or their lack of it, that they have to browbeat you into believing what they're telling you? The step that we're discussing tonight is referred to in the Mishnah as Emunas Chachamim, which we translate as faith in the rabbis. But that's a bad translation, because faith is a product of desire. I have faith that my stockbroker is going to get me a 300% return on my investment because I want him to. But it's not based on any knowledge. Knowledge has to be based on evidence. And not all that evidence is empirical. I, for one, have never been to China. I absolutely know for a fact China exists. I have stuff all over my house with Made in China stickers all over it. There's enough evidence in my life to know that China exists without me having ever been there or seen it. Because seeing is only one way of knowing something. There are many ways to collect evidence and to draw conclusions. Which accurately describes how we view our relationship with Judaism. Is it faith or is it knowledge? Judaism teaches us that our convictions have to be based on knowledge. V'yadata hayom, and you will know today, and you will pass this on. V'yadata hayom ki Hashem hu Elokim, you will know today that He is God. You will know it. Not you will believe it. Not you will hope it. Not you will wonder it. But that you will know that He is your God. Emunah does not mean faith. Emunah means faithfulness. When we wish a couple they should build a bayis ne'eman, a house of emunah, we don't mean there should be a house full of faith. It means that they should have a house of faith, a house of faithfulness. And that's a sensible way to live. Rabbi Weinberg likes to give the example of the guy who goes to the mechanic, and the mechanic comes back and says, I just looked and I see that your car needs a carburetor. It's going to cost you $300. And you say, well, how did you know that that's what's wrong with the car? And he says, well, I put my hand on the hood of the car and it was running, and I sensed that's what's wrong. And you would never give him the $300 because that's not the way in which you make decisions in life. And yet that's how so many of us go through life making our decisions. Because someone feels it's the right thing to do. Because someone has told us they think or they feel it's the right thing to do. Pirkei Avos tells us we need to have emunas chacham. We need to be faithful to the wisdom of the sages. Don't blindly follow our sages. That's not what the Torah is asking us to do. To abrogate our God-given mind is not an ethic, a value in Judaism. We're supposed to listen to chachamim. We're supposed to listen to wise people, but not unconditionally. We need to be critical. We need to ask. If you see contradiction, ask them. If you have something that rubs you wrong, confront it, but give the person a fair hearing. Give weight to what the person has to say, even if it goes against your prejudices. Resolve the things you don't understand. Don't leave them unanswered. But then be faithful to that wisdom that you are taught. Judaism does not have a concept of infallibility. We don't have a concept of religious leaders who don't make mistakes. Any human being can make a mistake. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, only God, doesn't make mistakes. But that same God also created a system in which He entrusted His message to the Chachamim. Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Sinai, and that was passed to Yoshua, and that was passed to Nevi'im, and that was passed to the Zakanim, and passed to Nevi'im, and passed to the Anshe Knesset Gadol. It was passed to the sages, it was passed to the rabbis. The Tanaim and the Amoraim, the sages of our Talmud, are men of intellects that we'll never be able to grasp if we had all the intellect in the world at our fingertips. But the Torah wants us to think, which means believe in the rabbis, but don't put your mind into a deep freeze. The sages are not infallible, but they're still the best source of that truth that we have available to us today. They understand the Word of God. Study what they have to say, and then be faithful to that wisdom. That's emunas chacham.